Just waiting. There we go. Zika Jim, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of Union Hall. So last week we had, I think we've broken about 10K listeners coming in. So let's see if this time we can break that record. Today we have Talib with us from Citrea and Mason from Tokensoft. I'll give them some time to introduce themselves, but I'll immediately kind of set what I'm thinking this episode will be about, and that's BTC DeFi, which we love with Union, but I think everyone in crypto obviously loves, and kind of like the token market. What type of tokens do we see performing well? Where do we kind of see the market evolve as a whole? And especially Mason, I think, is an expert on the regulatory side of things. But first of all, Talib, I'm kind of curious about Citrea, where you guys are at right now, how you see BTC L2s evolve and such.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the intro. So, hi everyone, my name is Talib. I'm a DevRel engineer at Citrea. At Citrea, we're building a rollup on Bitcoin. It's an EVM compatible ZK rollup. Unlike sidechains, it has some interesting properties that we can go over like for the rest of this call, basically. And this rollup also comes with a trust minimized Bitcoin bridge based on an algorithm, based on an idea called BitVM, which is also a very crazy paradigm recently. And yeah, so we've been building this for, I think, about almost 2 years now at the moment. And throughout this 2 years, I think I kind of saw the evolution of BTC DeFi, basically. Because when we first started, I kind of remember the days like there were good actors and there were like, kind of obviously all the time interesting actors in the space. And people were discussing ideas and chasing ideas. And then the hype all of a sudden, started to be more and more obvious. We started to see new projects. We started to see increase in the BTC utilization in other chains, and we started to see many more interesting designs for the DeFi space, essentially. And I think right now it's really in a great shape. Now, like the TVLs are, buzzing around, and then people are coming with very cool usage of non-custodial platforms. And when at the time when the rollups go live, which we can talk further, I think it will be even more interesting. We will see some crazy designs and crazy developments in that end. But I'm really happy and really bullish on what's going on overall on the BTC DeFi space.
Yeah, I have to say, like, of course, I saw you guys do many talks on initially when BitVM was kind of announced and developed on. And I'm happy to see that, like, I've definitely seen the BTC L2 space. There's maybe been a bit of a shakeout with projects, right? Because remember, like, at the height of the hype, everyone was claiming, like, this is a BTC L2. And I saw you guys kind of fight the good fight where, like, no,
Yeah.
like, what you are actually talking about is a side chain. Like, there's only a couple parties who are really innovating on the technical side. So good to see that Citrea still is at the forefront of this. And I'm happy to also see that, like, indeed, like, I feel like it's at least for Union, like, one of the assets that we have the most requests for coming in. We now have like about 99% of TVL on Babylon is from BTC, obviously, and through Union. So it's cool to see that actually the most OG asset in crypto is now the one that is like peaking utilization as well.
That's for sure great.
Yeah. Mason, feel free to introduce yourself.
My name is Mason. I've got into the space in 2013. At first, I thought Bitcoin wouldn't work as a payment system, so because the price was moving too much and it took 10 minutes to settle. And so I tried making a dollar-based blockchain. Spent a year building it, a month learning about all the licensing you need to do that. And then was a BitGo for a couple of years, and then started Tokensoft 2017, where we do token sales primarily. We also have gotten access to the SEC. Also launched a product line called Wrap.com, cross-chain institutional bridge. To date, we've had about $1 billion raised through the platform, created about 20 billion in market cap. And so I've seen sort of the trends over time. And I'm excited that it seems like the space is back to building apps. Hopefully we see a new wave of innovation coming up in the next, in the coming years.
Yeah, very cool. What I've kind of observed so far in the space feels like 3 years ago, we saw like projects do hardcore infra without almost a use case, right? Like a pure L2 that have like no product mindset at all. That seems to be like a bit over now. I feel like teams that are like, even if they're building hardcore tech, right, you need to have like a bit of a application focus, product focus, know what the user actually wants. Do you kind of see the same perhaps with like new projects that are talking with you guys, potentially like tokens of interest by institutionals and such?
Yeah, I think if you're building a layer 2 blockchain or an L1 blockchain, you sort of start with the innovation. What's differentiated about it, what's interesting, and then the second question you kind of ask is, how do I increase transaction volume? And it feels like everyone's starting to ask the second question, how do I build transaction volume? And so we're seeing different chains with different strategies. Some people have a sort of a gaming strategy. They think gaming is going to have the highest transaction volume because we're doing a lot of clicking and stuff. We're playing games. And then other folks are maybe focusing on payments being the best for that, being fastest set for trading. And so I think it's good that the space is finally asking these questions, because this is going to be what makes their chains valuable at the end of the day. And so I'm sort of happy to see this transition sort of up the stack, you could say. And it could be that people are just starting to look at it from first principles. It could be that people are less concerned about regulatory stuff. It seems like a lot of that stuff is starting to smooth itself out, and so you see developers get a little bit more creative sometimes when that happens. You see, before we had people that were hesitant to get into crypto because of regulations. Good entrepreneurs go elsewhere, so now they're coming into crypto. So I think it's going to be a really exciting time in the space. And I think people are just starting to ask the right questions about how to increase transaction volume on their chain.
Yeah, and so I feel like this is still like a bit of a schism with what I see projects prioritize. Indeed, like transaction volume, earn hard revenue by like every user paying you a little bit, or potentially like sit on a big pool of funds, manage to make like 12% for your users and take like 1% of that as your revenue, right? And almost be an asset custodian. How do you see that, or which are you more of a fan of right now for, let's say, like new startups picking a strategy?
I think the more use cases, the better. And so, sitting on assets. Well, I think fundamentally everything's going to converge towards traditional business models. And so, people try creative things, but there's fundamental reasons why certain business models haven't become a thing yet. Unless there's a technological innovation that opens a new door, perhaps new business models can be built on that. But generally speaking, accumulating a lot of TVL and then taking a slice of that, or accumulating a lot of assets, taking a slice of that, that's a business model that's been in place for a very long time now. I just love it when I see chains deploy like new innovative apps, things that weren't possible before, business models layered into gaming or other sort of like concepts that weren't possible before. And I think to be really successful, I do think you need like a business model innovation paired with a technical innovation. And so those kinds of things capture my attention more so. And I think, every chain should be thinking about how to have a diversity of these applications. I think we saw a lot of copy paste in the past, 5-6 years. And I think that playbook has sort of played out, and the problem you have is developers tend to be more so tourists, copy pasting things onto new chains. And in certain situations, we've seen it work. Like Aerodrome did a good job, but they went a little bit above and beyond and layered tokenomics into sort of the user experience, how you interact with the app. And so I think, now with the increasing diversity of entrepreneurs, with a lot of these business models sort of being played out now and matured, I think people should target new innovative things. I think, getting TVL and then capturing a slice of that, or just having a treasury getting a slice of that, it's a little boring. And so I hope people can do more exciting things on chain.
Yeah, I have something to add here, if you don't mind. So I think many people strangely still aim towards like CDTVL is the end game. And I really find this still very interesting, because the moment we check some of the BTC DeFi protocols, and not the good ones, obviously, but for some of them, I really find them a bit interesting in the sense that, the growth and the capture of value doesn't really seem natural. And I think this is potentially crucial because it kind of affects the perception of these products in addition to the perception of the whole, even the industry as well. So when I'm, kind of in the ETH conferences and I talk with other people, the question at the end of the day comes down to like, what's going on over there. And then you can, like, there's definitely very deep infra developments going on. There's some hardcore tech going on, some crazy cryptographic stuff going on. But then when you see the actual developments, it doesn't convert enough yet, I believe. I think that's a common problem that we have in the industry. But as Mason said, like, people need to innovate. And, I guess it takes some time still for all these things to get matured and to go to mainnet and function fully. I think we are getting there, but I don't think many people realize the potential still outside of the industry because of this stuff.
Yeah, at least from what I've seen so far, like I feel like, especially with like high TVL numbers, we see a lot of the LSTs and LRTs hit this, right? With like EtherFi, Lombard, and such, which under the hood usually are kind of token deals, right? Like they go to whales, they manage to get the TVL because basically they're expanding like their current, let's say, like equity and asset reserves to build a dominant position for the future of BTC DeFi, right? If you're the biggest right now, then odds are that you're going to remain being the biggest. But even with all of that, I feel like they haven't actually captured that much of Bitcoin's potential, right? Like I think Lombard is the biggest right now, and they're only at 2 billion, right? So even though like it's relatively solid tech, focusing like as much as possible on growth right now hasn't yet yielded like 100 billion Bitcoin or a big number like that. So I'm indeed wondering if indeed like the true unlock is, can we make it such that like you're at zero risk of losing your BTC? Because that, at least with my Bitcoin, right, that's always what I'm worried about. Like getting a little bit of yield on it is nice, but absolutely cannot lose it because that's the bag for sitting on for like the next 15 years at least to ride that out.
The funny thing about seeking zero risk is you should avoid anyone that tells you there is zero risk or any platform.
Yeah, that's pretty correct. We get that question very often with Union, of course, because we use like ZK to facilitate bridging, and then people ask like, so that means you can't get hacked? And it's like, well, like in the end, it's code written by humans, right? And a long like supply chain of code from researchers, libraries that we use, our own code, the protocol built on top. So yeah, theoretically 100% secure, but in actuality, like humans remain fallible, of course, as always, protocol level risk.
Yeah, and what you were saying about TVL, like Talib, I really agree with I think your concern about TVL is the metric. It's like it's a metric that can be gamed, and so we see a lot of like capital coming in and coming out, and so the question is, what are the right metrics to track, and then does it converge on traditional app metrics, daily active users, monthly active users? My favorite one that I've seen is Coinbase's monthly transacting users. So it's not just a user that's logging in; it's one that's actually actively in the platform using it. And I think the thing about that is there's an economic link. So daily active user, you can't prove that there's an economic link to usage of the app, but monthly transacting you can.
Yeah, it's also kind of it's a very tricky game because the moment you also try to use the transaction counts or the users, then it also gets game too, because like we obviously know, unfortunately, as an effect of the industry, like these numbers get spotted for the kind of profit seeking or like token airdrop seeking or whatever. So I don't think they're also very right metric to do, but I really actually this can be a separate discussion topic, like what should be the most ideal one. Obviously, you can filter out things by running your own algorithm and then detect on your own to see actually how much of the usage is real and how much of is not. But I think still many people are trying to stay on the slippery slope of number of transactions, number of accounts, TVL. I don't know. Someone needs to come up with a better design of these, but I don't have anything specific in mind.
Yeah, and then you have to, of course, take into account if the project has immaculate vibes or not.
Yeah,
right?
that's another thing too.
Third pillar, of course. Yeah.
Good luck.
How do you measure that?
Yeah, I guess Kaito made kind of an attempt, but I still see like those types of stats be all over the place, and obviously people figure out the algorithm, so it's like heavily abused and kind of figured out in the end as well. So I guess good feeling if you like the token or not, right? Comes down to that. Like you really like the project and you want to see it succeed because you kind of believe in what it stands for. I feel like within crypto still, even though we've been building for a long time right now, it keeps innovating at a rapid pace, and we're not at this end stage yet at all, right? Different projects have a completely different philosophy still, and where we want to see like where the financial world kind of ends up. And so in the end, like if you support a project, want to build on top of something or build something yourself, you have to kind of believe, does it work towards that wider goal itself? Definitely see that, of course, with Citrea, right? Like you guys take a very solid stance on where you want like L2s to be at, and the non-custodial stance, we do the same. I feel like some projects that come in between, sure, they get some hype, but in the end, it's a bit of a distraction from why we're actually in the blockchain space.
Yeah, it also hurts like to see like actually some of these projects that I see like obviously I'm not going to name any names, but in the basically on my Twitter feed when I scroll down and I see projects and different announcements and different campaigns and stuff like that, I actually know that some of them have some potential, and I actually know that some of them are going to achieve this too. But for a bunch of projects, it's just like sometimes the approach and the way to market yourself seems very interesting. I don't know, like we kind of come from more of an engineering first perspective. Maybe this helps, maybe not, I don't know. But to me, I think obviously tech alone does not help fully because you need these applications that we've been mentioning since the beginning of this stream, basically. But I think tech should still be the core component against every other odd, and we should always be honest on what we're building and what we're not building. I think this is still getting more mature day by day, hopefully, compared to 2 years ago, 1 year ago, it's much better. But still, I think, like again, there are many pain points that I have internally about the industry, but this is also one of them. Like the hype does not win you the race. It's the long-term plans and like
I think vibes follow sort of a bell curve, and I think if the vibes are too good, then I think the project doesn't necessarily last long term. If the vibes
yeah,
are too bad, then no. But you want to be somewhere right in the middle, maybe the upper quadrants. And so I think I've
exactly.
noticed that when there's like too much hype, or when the founder is way too confident on Twitter, then usually something bad tends to happen. So it's good to, I think, stay grounded in the principles of the project, and stay grounded in the metrics, etc.
It's
Yeah, I
also
remember.
part of the yeah. You go, please, Karen. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember this kind of short phase. Felt like about 4 to 5 months, where everyone on Twitter was talking about how each founder should be non-stop yapping, founder-based marketing, how actually like the BD is more important and go to market. And felt during the period, felt like about 10 months ago when that was like the height of the narrative on Twitter, that we kind of lost sight on like why is a crypto startup valuable, right? Is it because investors believe that you can one time pump a token, everyone gets out, makes a profit, and you leave a bunch of people back holding? Or is it because like you have a certain like technical innovation that you're doing, like you're building something actually cool, bringing something new to the table? And I feel like we're actually like right now returning to one again, believing like, hey, you should be doing something that's from a technical perspective is actually very cool, right? Like dare to dream that we're building genuinely like really cool stuff. How about indeed like we build a rocket to Mars or something that like is really aspiring to like massively improve something, instead of let me take these three things off the shelf, market it in a different way, and have a better go to market than potentially a competitor. So I'm very happy to see that transition again.
So we've seen a lot of projects launch, and we have seen copy paste projects raise a lot of money. And I have a engineering background. I started in the space as a developer, and from a development standpoint, that's not necessarily a point of integrity, to sort of like launch project, like fork a project and then launch the same thing with different marketing. But then from a go to market perspective, That's sort of like a very different angle to look at. And I think what we are seeing is success in the long term, focus on differentiation and sort of looking at perspective. And so I think in the short term, it does do well, like, for raising investment, things like that, innovate and differentiate away from whatever project has been over time. So I think there is a path to success there. It just takes the right team and a little bit of innovation to get there.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think we got 95% of what you said. Yeah, I definitely see like some teams manage to like start off with what I would say like is relatively boring, right? Like I as a developer look at it and go like, oh yeah, this is a fork with like a 5% change slapped on top. But then they manage to indeed like use the success with that to transition the team into something more technical and innovative, and from there on continue building a more interesting product. I think actually probably the first example of that was kind of old school with Matic and Polygon, right? Like that started off with being kind of a what's it, like Ethereum sidechain with a centralized bridge, right? Which they over time managed to transition, and now this empire of extremely interesting technology, a lot of ZK work being done, egg layer, etc. So definitely, from what at least I find exciting, you see a lot of progress being made there.
Yeah, and I think with the Polygon example, I think we did see some success, or at least I think it was sort of a path where they found a M&A path to sort of like innovating and bringing the good talent onto the project. And I think we're seeing two things. So one is like, yeah, you can innovate internally. So maybe you have a good technical co-founder, you hire in highly technical, capable people because you have the respect of the co-founder. And the other path seems to be M&A, which is, I think it's probably harder to nail, but I think when it works in crypto, it's really, really fascinating. And I think, that's another path that I think folks should be open to. I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up, just because talent's hard to find. People are moving faster. And so I think we're at a, really exciting time in the space. And, that's something that should definitely be explored more.
Yeah, but even M&As from like a culture perspective require like the acquiring team to like respect technology in a sense, right? Like see the value in that. So I kind of acknowledge that maybe you can build this in-house, but indeed see that there's like long-term value in indeed continuing to innovate instead of only focusing on the marketing portion. Yeah. So Talib, I'm very curious with like Citrea. So I kept a lot of track on you guys' tech about a year ago, up to 6 months ago. I'm very curious with regards to like BitVM. And sorry, Mason, it's going to become a bit more technical than the Tokensoft, which you're a developer as well, of course. I remember it being like a 12-step operation or something, like kind of like a very awful way to like increment the virtual machine, go steps forward. Have like significant improvements been made on BitVM? Like have we seen like a better way now to do it? How often could Citrea settle, for example? I'm kind of interested in those nerdy stats.
Yeah. I think this is a very important question. So I think we can take it a bit from the more fundamentals to explain this fully. So what BitVM does is essentially for everyone, basically. With BitVM, you can kind of verify ZK proofs on Bitcoin. And why this matters is normally Bitcoin script and the Bitcoin as a blockchain itself is, in terms of capabilities, a bit limited. You have the block sizes of 4 megabytes that comes around almost every 10 minutes. And then it's a UTXO-based blockchain. And so for the usage of these UTXOs, you can do some computation under the limits of the Bitcoin blockchain itself. And one common problem between Bitcoin and any other sidechain today is how are you going to move your funds out of Bitcoin to that blockchain, which is essentially a bridge problem. And so far, the working solutions are generally honest majority solutions, which is like multisig's. What happens is you give your funds to a 3 or 5 multisig, let's say, and then you basically get the equivalent of wrapped BTC asset on another blockchain, and then you can use it. But the common problem is that we also see recently more and more with multisigs being hacked is multisigs can get hacked. That's the one problem. And the other one is as the value of Bitcoin continues to increase more and more and more, let's say one Bitcoin becomes $1 million, then the other problem is how long will you be able to trust these 3 or 5 multisig or honest majority multisig? Obviously, so far they worked good. I hope they will continue to work good too. But in general, these are 2 trust problems that we have today. So BitVM kind of helps you with this because you can now do kind of ZK verification. You can do ZK-enabled bridges between Bitcoin and other side systems. And using BitVM, you can come up with trust minimized bridges, which means 1 of n trust assumption bridges, I call it. Cool idea is, let's say n is 10. Then with BitVM idea, you only need 1 out of 10 to be always online and functional for everything to continue to work and for funds to be not to be stolen. This is a massive improvement. Basically, instead of an honest majority, instead of relying on 3 people being honest out of 5 or something like that, you only need 1 out of n to be honest. Even though, let's say, n minus 1 of the remaining n1 is fine, or remaining 9, let's say, in this case, is dishonest, then still funds will be secure in the BTVM-based bridges. So the idea is very new. Actually, it's been 1.5 years since the first article came out, and then the BTVM 2 came out, and the things kind of changed. At the moment, BTVM bridges are kind of we made one on testnet now. It's going mainnet soon, hopefully, with the Citrea itself. They're not much more practical compared to the initial timelines. Now these bridges are much more achievable. They fit into Bitcoin blockchain, and we were able to kind of balance the number of operators and the amounts and stuff like that. Yeah, so even though it's a bit if you're aware of Rube Goldberg machines, these kind of machines are extremely complex and seems extremely weird to do things. But for now, BTVM bridges are becoming much better, and now we were able to correct down many things. And there is actually even more improvements coming up. I think in the last 2 weeks we found some more improvements that we will share too. Yeah, that's a common problem. Working on a non-Ethereum-like chain and then trying to do ZK verification, kind of problematic. But hopefully we were able to get over it.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope this wasn't a boring one, but
No, I'm very curious for some of the stats. So for example, let's say I'm redeeming, so transferring from Citrea back to get actual Bitcoin in my wallet again. How long does that take in general for a user with the current testnet design?
Yeah, so in the current setup, again, there's some other R&D work that goes on that completely improve this, or remove the problems. But let's say for the current moment, I mean, so the way it works is, as a user, when you want to exit, 1 of n pays your money, so you instantly exit actually in the optimistic scenario. But then the people who paid you gets the money back from the multisig in a time interval between 2 days or 1 week. So this kind of depends on the design decisions of your own. But let's say 1 week. But for the user perspective, if everything goes right, then they are able to exit instantly. And all they need to do then is wait for the Bitcoin blocks to be finalized, which is 6 blocks that we count, even though it's not deterministic still. Let's say something went wrong. Let's get over the worst case. Let's say you wanted to exit and then your money is not given. In this scenario, again, 1 out of n, which is 1 of them going to be honest in this case, challenges the people who is not paying your money in the bridge system, and then slashing and kicking them out. And then they will be able to give your money back. So obviously this adds some time to the user's exit because now you don't get your money instantly. You need to wait for some time. But considering this system will be securing billions of dollars potentially, it is much better compared to your money being able to stolen instantly too. So the finality in the optimistical case is 6 Bitcoin blocks. And then on the unhappy scenario, it goes up to 1 week, but at least your money is not stolen. I think that's the kind of the trade-off you get.
So this is structured as an optimistic bridge, right?
It's an optimistic ZK bridge, you can say it. Like the challenging mechanism is done by ZK snarks. You generate a Bitcoin Lite client proof and then post it. So it's like it's a very weird construction, but at the end of the day, it's an optimistic ZK bridge, we can say it.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I'm saying that in the sense that like it just takes one approval to confirm the transaction, and then
Yeah.
it sounds like there's a period where people can disagree.
Yeah.
And okay, so then what I've seen with optimistic bridges elsewhere is we do see like the 1 week or 2 week bridging time to get out of the system. And how are you guys thinking about that or like modeling that? Because that's generally, I think, it's a de-risking mechanism. The question is, does it have to be that long? When are you mathematically secure and able to move the funds out?
Yeah, so for the user, again, if everything goes right, then you don't have this 1 week withdrawal delay, basically. You just get it instantly. But for the problematic case, I think it's just a security trade-off, essentially. And the 1 week cutoff is because of the time locks on the UTXOs, and also being able to generate the proof and get it mined takes some time. So because you need to give some breathing time period for both challengers and also the operators to respond as well. Because let's say the operators are honest and then still they get challenged, then in this case, even though they did their job perfectly, they still get challenged and they still should have the time to respond with another Bitcoin Lite client proof. So for all these proof stuff and for all these to be mined as well at the same time, you need to give some breathing period. And based on the calculations and the game theory stuff, I think like we found the 1 week to be practical for this. And again, like only ideally, and hopefully it will never happen. Like you will never need to challenge someone, because we believe like we're basically forming a set of operators and signers that will collect the sequencing fees and stuff. And these people will hopefully be, at least one of them will always be honest, so that the system will continue to work. But let's say for the worst scenario, let's say, the world gone really bad and then something happened. For these kind of very bad scenarios, these one of them challenges exist.
I think what's so one thing that's interesting here is if you look at the design for Arbitrum with their soft finality, so they kind of have a very nice formula to figure out how long you need to wait to be reasonably secure, which really relates to how long could an entity censor like the L1 or where the dispute is happening, right? And I think actually, like on Ethereum, it's much harder to actually censor out a transaction, right? Because there's a much larger amount of block producers technically. And I think on the case of Bitcoin, indeed, like you would have to make this window a lot longer, because technically, like large mining pools could theoretically like slow down your whole dispute process for much longer by trying to exclude these ZK proofs being submitted on the chain. So even though like Bitcoin is an asset and such, I think from a technological perspective, this actually shows why like Ethereum's design, which took obviously a long time to get to POS and be out there in its current state, actually has really nice properties when you go with like an L2 centric architecture. Because I think at the moment Arbitrum says like it's about 30 minutes that you need to wait for a optimistic proof on the chain to be like almost absolutely certain that someone will have disputed it if it was an incorrect proof, because you can't censor Ethereum for 30 minutes. But I guess with Bitcoin, not sure how much the largest mining pool is right now, but there's probably a reasonably feasible chance that you actually censor Bitcoin for about 30 minutes.
Yeah, you need to pay the fee, and you like, even though it's 99.99999% probability, still it's probabilistic, so you need to give out some time period for it. But yeah.
I'm not sure if I interrupted you, Mason, if you had something to put in on this.
There's a lot of fun conversations, I think, to have around this. And I'm glad there's been finally some mathematical modeling around when are the funds actually at risk and where does that taper off. I think in the past when I've asked people, why is it 1 week? Why is it 2 weeks? Sometimes you hear, oh, we picked a really big number because it's safer. But I think, the right way to do this stuff is to like mathematically model it, because I think the space generally spends a lot of time going back and forth in debates about things when you can actually just model it and prove, whether something is actually a concern or not, and at what point. So I think that's great to hear. Also, like, other thoughts are like, from a development perspective, it's sort of hard to build when Bitcoin's blocks are so slow. In Ethereum, it's like a lot easier to develop. And so, other thoughts are just like, what is the development experience? I guess we're talking to the right person. What is the development experience like on BitVM? Is it possible to sort of have a faster sort of throughput environments to, do some testing and develop a little bit more quickly? But yeah, I guess curious to hear, how are you guys thinking about the development experience and traditional bottlenecks people run into, and how to address those?
Yeah, I think there are two aspects of this. So one of them is building the blockchain on Bitcoin, which is essentially a rollup for our case. And the other one is the building a bridge on Bitcoin, which is essentially the Clementine, the BitVM bridge design. I think these two have some different aspects. So building a rollup on Bitcoin is, I believe, a tiny bit maybe easier, because what happens at the end of the day is like you come up with this rollup design, and then you basically arrange your crates and modules in a way that your sequencer produces the blocks, and then your prover fetches them and then generates a proof, and then you have an additional module that sends the state differences with a snark proof into Bitcoin L1. So on that end, the problem is, how are you going to set the fees, and when are you going to cut the batches of proofs on the rollup, so that you need to estimate these kind of stuff with a model so that you don't do overpaying. And these transactions also should end up as a standard transaction, because otherwise you will wait for a long time for them to get mined as well. So it's kind of like there's some tricks around this. For the finality, you need your transactions to be mined, and for them to be mined, you need to put them in good shape and good fees. So that's one problem on the rollup side. But I think we were able to get over it for some time ago quite easily. On the other hand, though, BitVM part, I think like it was actually a collaborative development effort. So the whole BitVM ZK verifier part is developed by actually 6-7 companies in the industry. It is us, it is Alpen Labs, it's Fiamma, and then it's there was Element Labs, and then there were 2 companies. I'm really sorry, I couldn't remember their name, but like it was essentially a collaborative effort. Like everyone worked on it, and like everyone focused on specific different parts. And it's really a deep down cryptographic work as well, because you do elliptic curve operations on a script environment without even a multiplication opcode. So if you want to do 9 times 8, or if you want to multiply a number by 256, let's say, what you do is you duplicate the element on the stack and add, and then duplicate and add and stuff like that. There's no multiplication opcode. So it was kind of tough to finish for everyone on the BitVM, but I'm really glad that it's, I think, almost fully finished now. On the audits are almost being done for the integration. It was, I think, kind of challenging, obviously, but I think we had some fun on that end. We learned a lot as well. So for the team, like many people were coming from the math background on the BitVM team, and then they kind of had long whiteboard sessions in the office, and then they were able to figure it out. Was Bitcoin blockchain itself too helpful for this? I don't think so. Are all Bitcoiners happy about this? I also don't think so. Like some people just, kind of like the way Bitcoin it is today. They prefer to have it as a gold, which is their opinion. I deeply respect, not my opinion. But I think like it was a really wild ride, and I'm really looking forward to what's going to be built, because I think that's what matters at the end. That's why we need builders like you and all the other builders as well. Without all the apps, without all the Bitcoin applications, it's just some infra work that no one will probably use. So that's why we need the killer features, and that's where guys like you and all the other guys, all the other builders comes into the work.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see if BitVM and Citrea and in general, like an execution environment on top of Bitcoin, will show that it is valuable enough to convince the classic Bitcoiners to just extend the Bitcoin like instruction set itself. Because for me right now, so for listeners here who aren't as familiar with it, Bitcoin technically has smart contracts script, but it is very simple. with the instructions that you have access to. So way simpler than anything you could do on Ethereum or Solana. Like you can barely call them programs. And a big part of the discussion was, should we extend script, right, and add opcodes to basically add more functionality to Bitcoin itself, which from a developer's perspective would just solve so much, right? It would make our life so much easier. And so developers usually immediately go like, let's just do that. Let's just extend the list of opcodes, add all of these, and now I can do whatever. But all of those proposals always seem to fail. And BitVM is almost a workaround, right?
Yeah. You go ahead, Mason.
And just really quick, adding more opcodes to Bitcoin is the fastest way to start World War III. So I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, it's true what Mason said. So just, I think we can do some, I think there's some confusion around generally in the BTM and EVM and all this stuff. To go over it real quick, like the Citrea itself is an EVM chain, essentially. It's something else. Whatever you can do on EVM, you can do it. Also, this is the same for some other side chains too. BitVM is more like, rather than an SVM or an EVM or like, kind of Cosmos execution environment, rather than this, BitVM is a way to do some proving stuff back and forth kind of algorithm. So it's not like a practical smart contract perspective on that end. It's not like a fully fledged VM where you do a bunch of stuff that whatever you want. It's rather with BitVM, you can now optimistically prove or like prove if you can whether an execution happened or not in the context of zero-knowledge proofs. I think this gets confused because whenever we do some integration talks with some other partners and stuff like that, and then there are mostly questions form around, okay, but with BitVM, how are you going to do this? And the answer is BitVM does not affect this at all. It's mostly the same as the EVM, but the BitVM is helpful for the bridges, helpful for doing any other kind of ZK verification that you want to do. So bridges are using BitVM, but BitVM is something else. It's just a verification algorithm. And only adding opcodes. So like for the BitVM bridges, you need one people, to be honest, right? If we were to get an opcode like opcat, then what would happen is you could actually build trustless L2s on Bitcoin, which is huge. You could be able to exit whenever you want without depending on anyone by proving things. But the problem is opcat is very controversial because it brings some different attack vectors, people believe. I checked them on my own in my free time. I still do it. I don't believe it's that much of a risk, but I don't know. But there is some consensus going around, actually. I think in the following years, you may see some minor improvements, such as CTV, which is restricting the path in which UTXOs can be spent. So I cannot make money on Bitcoin. I cannot make a UTXO that says this money should go to Kyle first and then it should go to Mason first. Then I cannot do this on the seat today on the Bitcoin world. But with CTV, you can do this. You can basically arrange the paths in which UTXOs can be spent. And this could be useful because let's say you are a centralized exchange, let's say, and then if you set up your funds or stuff like that based on this, then money cannot be moved around in any arbitrary way. It can be only moved towards user or something like that. Or you can do vaults based on this. You can lock your money and then get it back only with a certain way. So we may get one or two minor opcodes like this, and even this kind of stuff helps with bunch of like development, bunch of Lightning, Arc, even Citrea and BitVM. So this kind of stuff help. But the problem is everyone has a different opinion in the Bitcoin world. So if you believe Bitcoin is gold, you don't want it to change. If you believe Bitcoin should be more for Lightning, you want some other opcode. If you believe it should be more for BitVM, you want some other opcode. If you believe you need trustless, you want opcat. But again, like at the end of the day, it's all fights. And what matters, I think this is also something that you forget in the ETH world too. Everything we do, no matter how you decentralize, no matter how less you centralized, whatever, which technology you use, at the end of the day, everything is social consensus. Even though code is low for many of us, even though we believe what's written shall be executed, at the end of the day, social consensus is what matters. And I think we will see one side effect of this in Bitcoin in following years.
And because social consensus is the only thing that matters, also the fastest way to get a opcode into the code base is to add as many Bitcoin maxis and Bitcoin core devs to your cap table as possible. I don't see that attempted enough anymore.
It's
Yeah, you
also
have
tricky. Not all maxis are in favor of it, obviously. Many of them don't want it. We had some Bitcoiners, ex-Bitcoiners in our investment cap table. And then in the recent weeks, there's been some controversy happened. And some people didn't really like it at all. So it's kind of like, it's impossible to convince anyone. And I don't think many of the Bitcoiners actually like giving up on their integrity too. So which is, even though they don't like me or they don't like us or I don't like them, it's okay. But yeah, I think this kind of techniques could have been played on the ETH world much easier. I don't know, maybe a controversial take, but I don't know. We will see it.
I think we should do this talk again in about a year or so, and then we'll see if indeed, like, Citrea is sitting on 200 billion of Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and indeed, like, it's proven that there's like a true ask for this, or maybe still fighting on the forums to get OPCAT added and other opcodes.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we're I think running out of time, so I don't want to occupy any more of your time. If you guys have closing thoughts or words, feel free to say them now.
You want to go ahead, Mason?
Yeah, I'm just excited to see sort of this next phase. I think there's a lot of innovation happening in the BTC space. I think generally folks are more focused on apps now. So if you're building apps out there, or you're interested in building apps, definitely talk to Talib and see how you can sort of grow the ecosystem on the Bitcoin chain. And yeah, thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us too. As a closing thought, so again, I think all of us have said the same thing at the end. Infra or all developments or all the ideas without proper apps or proper builders does not make you win for sure, no matter how quality your team is or no matter what you build is. So that's why we actually run a program called Origins. Let me try to show this actually. So I don't know, like if you can see. So it's an incubation program that we run. It's we try to incubate Bitcoin native applications, like EVM applications with Bitcoin in mind. The design space is from self-custodial lending platforms to native DEXs to Bitcoin-based stablecoins, which you will see more announcements. So if this kind of stuff excites you as a builder, or like just you can ping me on Twitter or something anywhere. Even if it's not only me, just come up with an idea that's for Bitcoin, on Bitcoin, and then just find a company that works for it, and then just go for it. I think still only I don't know, less than 1% of Bitcoin is being utilized outside of L1, and we will see with the price go up as well. Much more interesting developments, exciting times, and I hope to catch up 1 year later and talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, the U Combinator program just ended. So for all of the developers listening in, I 100% recommend you contact Talib, contact Citrea, and start building on Bitcoin. Thank you guys so much for elucidating and educating us. Have a good conference, Mason, and you too, Talib.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thank you
having
very
us.
much. Yeah, it was great to chat, and see you guys. Bye bye.
See ya.